let's have Dr. Admire Dube, then we have Padare, then Mrs. Ruramai, then Arthur, then Chennai. Dr. Admire.
Thank you, Lynette, for the opportunity to speak, and thank you everyone for affording me this chance to add my 2 cents to this topic, which is quite pertinent to everyone who has a love for Zimbabwe, regardless of where you're located. My name is Dr. Admire Dube, and tonight, I'm not too sure where you're located at present, but it's night where I am. Tonight, I want to make my contribution more about deciphering the pronouncement that have been made by the Minister of Finance and the Central Bank, more than it is about maybe deciding the efficacy and the effectiveness of these policies. Where I'll start perhaps is I'll start at looking at the pronouncements themselves. First of all, I believe we should allocate the pronouncements that are monetary policy in nature and those that are fiscal in nature, because that helps us going forward on deciding what is effective and what is not, because the two, although they work hand in glove, they actually are looking at different assignments, although both have a net effect of trying to affect or effect the economy. So in this case, most of the pronouncements that we're dealing with, particularly from the time that I was listening, are to do with the monetary policy, which is mainly the pronouncements that were made by the Monetary Policy Committee, which includes Governor Mangujka from the Central Bank, Dr. Mlambo, Dr. Chipika, and the rest of the guys at the Monetary Policy Committee at the Central Bank. And while I'm in that, maybe I might also want to give a brief explanation of the fiscal policy, which is more to do with revenue collection and expenditure. So you are affecting the economy by deciding what to expend the money on, or how to budget, or how to save. And these are not exactly what the pronouncements we are discussing today were done, because these were more fiscal, more monetary policy announcements that were done by the central bank. So perhaps the major issue, which brings, of course, the rightful comment that these pronouncements by the Monetary Policy Committee were knee-jerk and they seem to be reactive, is because of the announcement of the inflation figure, which was put at about 191% officially at the last pronouncement. That was about a few days ago. And 191%, it so happens that even though some people are speculating it to be way higher, maybe around the region of 400%, then 191 still is the highest inflation rate in the world. So this figure, naturally, you'd expect the authorities in that department to jump about and try to effect change. Now, what they decided, from their search, they found out that about 30% of that figure is actually imported inflation. That is inflation that is brought to Zimbabwe by other geopolitical events that are happening outside the country, things like the increase in fuel because of the conflagration that's happening in Ukraine, of course. But of course, it still leaves the fact that 70% of that inflation, by their own checking, is still from local issues. So now they decided to decipher what are the local issues that are pushing that inflation that high. And what the committee decided was that that figure is coming mainly because of excess liquidity in the market. And by excess liquidity, I mean there's too much of, particularly Zimbabwe dollar, that is floating about in company hands, and such that the companies then are trying to dispose of this excess liquidity. In fact, if I'm to look at my numbers, checking, they were saying the money supply was standing at about 2.4 billion in cash that is floating about, and about 3 billion, which is in electronic money. And if you add these two numbers, you come out to about 5.4 billion, which is close to 80% of our total budget for last year, which was about 8 billion. That's a huge amount of cash that was floating about. Now they try to find out why this cash is there in the first place. And they found out that of the 3 billion that is electronic, about 85% of it And you can quote me on this figure. It's actually in one of the papers that is produced by the central bank periodically. They're saying 85% of it was produced by the loan books of commercial banks, which means economic actors were going to the commercial banks and they request for loans. These loans were, of course, at a very substandard, for lack of a better word, they were dead cheap because the bank policy rate had not been adjusted at the time. And they would use that money for speculative purposes, or particularly to buy stocks or to trade in parallel market or whatever. But the point is, this gave a net effect of commercial banks printing money because they are manufacturing this money, which is not backed by production, and then floating it into the market, which then explains, of course, one of the decisions that was done. Excuse me, I was walking upstairs. One of the decisions that was done by the central bank to stop banks from lending out money. Of course, that was very unsustainable. And 10 days later, they had to rescind that decision. But that all comes into effect in the sense that it explains why these decisions that were taken were actually taken. What was the purpose? And then you realize that's when they tried to maybe bring the point of the gold coins. There's so much, should I say, infamous gold coins that are being discussed by everyone here. And the gold coins, if you notice, everyone will speak of the fact that these gold coins are elitist, are for rich people, they're expensive. But we have to notice here one thing, that the intention was never to make these gold coins transactional in nature. They are an alternative investment tool. Look at them maybe as a share certificate for TM Hyper or whatever other trading counter. I think there are about 80 trading counters on the stock exchange, or maybe Econet. No one in their right mind would save money and buy a share at Econet and then want to use that share to make a daily transaction. You're just holding your value on the hope that this is an investment that's going to give you a return in future. This is the same idea that's being given for the introduction of the gold coins. And it's unfortunate that the central bank, on its part, is not explaining in full. You leave people then need to read Reserve Bank pronouncements, to read analysis pieces, to come up with all this. And it's not everyone who's got all that time to understand why are they doing what they're doing. So this fault, I'll really leave it on the door of the central bank. Maybe in short, that's what I'll say is my contribution for today.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Admire. Let's move on to Padare.
Yeah, my voice is playing up a little bit, but they call you a doctor for a reason. And you have shown why you are a doctor. And thank you so much, because this is what was missing in this conversation. The understanding of what is really going on, not speculative stuff, but however, it is good for people to behave in this manner. It is all good because people are pondering, people are pulling apart to try and understand this beast, which is not well explained. Like what the doctor has said. But for me, the policy is not totally out there. So speculative and trying to create a narrative that is to the contrary, it is actually, for me, and this is the way I deal with things, actually absurd and dangerous, because I will make calculated moves